Hey folks, Real Honesty with Jarmitlin. I'm Jarmitlin. This is part 4 of my top 25 favorite tag teams ever. And basically, I got 8 left. I'm just going to do them all in one fell swoop. I was going to separate them 4 and 4. And then I realized I really could just get this done. I might shorten my description as to why I like these teams so much. But it'll be pretty obvious as I go on why I think these teams are so awesome. I talked about a lot of great teams, and yes, there are some teams I've omitted. I've omitted either because I didn't watch that much of them when I was younger. I haven't seen as much of them. That doesn't mean that there aren't way more than 25 great, awesome tag teams out there in the history of wrestling. The Young Bucks aren't on here, by the way, because hashtag Buck the Young Bucks. But that being said, I just want to take a moment, thank everybody just for watching these, and let's get on with the show. So number 8, Harlem Heat. How could they not be? How could Harlem Heat not be on here? One of the best tag teams in WCW, if not the best tag team in WCW. It definitely top 5. If I were to, I think I actually did a top 25 top tag teams in WCW, and Harlem Heat was way up there, as they should have been. Harlem Heat's an awesome tag team. Stevie Ray, Booker T were great complements to each other. Obviously brothers, but also combination speed and agility and power. They were just great. 10-time tag team champions, I believe. They were part of some big events. They had some great feuds. I think they only briefly faced off against Road Warriors. In fact, I really can't think that they did much with them because Road Warriors were gone pretty soon after coming back to WCW in '96. But they feuded with the Nasty Boys, they feuded with Hall and Nash, feuded with a lot of great teams. And Harlem Heat's just one of those. Harlem Heat and Sensational Sherry, Sister Sherry. They were just great. Sherry really helped give Harlem Heat a great identity. Even though Harlem Heat had their own identity already, Sherry was a big part of that. And a lot of people forget. And also, Sherry looked really good for her 40s. That's not knocking. It's just there are some people that age badly. Sherry did not age badly. At least into her 40s, she aged pretty damn gracefully. But yeah, Harlem Heat had some great matches, and it was nice to see. It was nice to see a great dominant tag team that really just flowed so smooth. Obviously, since they were brothers, they knew what each other was thinking before the other did it. So it was really good. It was really good. Harlem Heat was a great tag team. Number 7, the Midnight Express. Well, there was Randy Rose and Dennis Condrey, and Bobby Eaton, and Stan Lane. At least I hope I got the first one right. I believe it was Randy Rose. Not Ruby Rose, whatever the hell a Ruby Rose is. Any incarnation of the Midnight Express was absolutely great. I always side more with the Stan Lane, Bobby Eaton version, because that was the version I saw the most of. But Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton were a great team also. They were tremendous workers. Jim Cornette, of course, with them. That's part of the reason why they are up here this high on the list. Even though the Midnight Express are a great team, any incarnation of them, they were always, great performers. They worked well with Fantastics, who were also a fantastic team. Pardon the pun. Their rivalry with the Rock and Roll Express was also just, the stuff of legends. The matches that they had in various promotions, especially in WCW, will be talked about for years and years from now because they were just that great. They're still talked about now to this day because of how great they were. The scaffold matches that they had with the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express in respective years at Starrcade 86 and 87. Sure, we're going to ignore the new Midnight Express because all due respect to, people involved, Bobby Holly and Bart Gunn, no, it was not a good idea. Not a good idea at all. But the original Midnight Express, the original 4 members, they were what tag team wrestling should have been. They were great heels, but they were hard to totally boo after a while because of how good they were. Sure, they would cheat and Cornette would help them win and all the stuff and everything. But Midnight Express were so damn good, you couldn't help at some point to just cheer them because they were such tremendous talents. Tremendous talents, tremendous workers. Some of the best ever. Truly one of the greatest tag teams ever. And they need to go into the Hall of Fame next year. They need to have the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette go in the Hall of Fame next year. Because that's long overdue. That tag team, because it's great the Rock and Roll Express went in, as they should have, and Jim Cornette inducted them, and that was a great induction. But the Midnight Express have to go in next year. Like, I think, because they had some good matches in New Orleans, if I recall right. So they should be in the Hall of Fame. Why not? They would be able to come a little full circle. Cornette could be in the Hall of Fame. I know that he said it doesn't really matter to him, and that's fine. But I think for Stan Lane, Bobby Eaton, Dennis Condrey, Randy Rose, especially for Stan Lane and Eaton, I'm not sure if Condrey and Rose are still alive. I'm not sure on that. I hope they are, but I'm not sure if they are. But it would be a way to honor the entirety of the Midnight Express. Not the new Midnight Express, but this. So they're great matches, and they're great matches and promos, especially from Cornette, and the way they could just work with just about anybody. Really good. I mean, they worked with the Southern Boys, the Wild Eyed Southern Boys, at Great American Bash 90, I want to say, which certainly wasn't a bad match. I mean, the Southern Boys were a basic tag team. I mean, they were good talents, but it was a basic name. But the Midnight Express worked really well with them. So yeah, that's there for number 7. Because the Midnight Express probably would have been ranked higher, but maybe if I was a little older. Now, looking back on it, I actually bumped them up quite a bit because I had them at number 9. I bumped them above the Rock and Roll Express, but I had to make the Rock and Roll Express and Midnight Express in the top 10 for sure. Number 6, America's Most Wanted. Yes, a TNA Impact Wrestling tag team has actually gotten into the top 10. Not shocking, because they had a really stacked tag division for a good while. Now they're building it back up and everything, but with a lot of teams I don't really care about, because that's just my opinion. But America's Most Wanted, Cowboy James Storm, Wildcat Chris Harris. You can't really watch any of their matches as a team and find any holes in them. Their feud with the New Church, their feud with Triple X, their feud with the Natural. Their feud with the Naturals in particular is one. The Naturals are a team that I want to give an honorable mention to, because Chase Steve and Andy Douglas are forgotten about as being a great team. Of course, they had Shane Douglas as their manager, which that didn't work so well. Gee, I wonder why. But America's Most Wanted, like any of their feuds, were just great, and they were great rivals also after they had broken up in late 2006, early 2007. But, one match that always sticks out in my mind. Triple X, Daniels and Skipper versus America's Most Wanted, steel cage match at Turning Point 2004. Losing team has to disband forever. Which actually did hold to be fair. I mean, I think Skipper was gone from the company within a year. But they did hold to that. I will give them that much credit. Triple X lost. And that was a famous match where Skipper walked the cage and everything. But America's Most Wanted also showed how great of a team they were. And they even had great matches against Dallas and Kid Cash. Dallas is Lance Hoyt, then became Vance Archer. And Lance Hoyt's often forgotten about as being a pretty good worker also. He had a really good moonsault for a 6'6", 6'7" guy. And him and Kid Cash were a good team. But he had just... America's Most Wanted ranks so highly because a lot of their matches really stick out in my mind. So many that are jumbling in my head. Their matches against Daniels and Styles were great when America's Most Wanted worked as heels. They always worked well together. Always worked well together. It's a shame. I'm glad that they broke them up. It's a shame they never tried to pair them back together. But they felt that Chris Harris might have, big possibilities as a single star. And no, it turned out to be James Storm was a big single star that they had. America's Most Wanted is a tremendous tag team, and they nearly broke the top 5. Nearly. But I did my top 5 the way I did for a reason. Number 5, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard. You can't find any flaws with these guys in the ring. None. Road Warriors, rockers in WWF. I think they worked with the Hart Foundation a little bit, but mainly on house shows. They worked with so many good people. So many good teams. They were great tag team champions. They were great workers, great heels. They could get the best match out of anybody. They get great matches out of the Road Warriors, who are ranked a little further up on this list. but they were able to sell and put the Road Warriors in danger and make them, and then, bump proper and make them seem all dominant and everything at the end. And Arn and Tully just always they were great on the mic, first off. That's part of the reason why they're ranked so high. They were great on the mic. Tully was great on the mic in his feud with Magnum and a few other things. And a few other feuds. Arn Anderson was great. Arn Anderson's one of the most unsung heroes on the mic ever. Ever in wrestling. Watching their matches, you cannot find any flaws in them. They're great technicians, great heels. Great. You couldn't help but fans did appreciate them, especially the Southern wrestling fans did appreciate them because of how great they were in the ring. They hated them for how, much they were heels. But God, they were so good in the ring. Short break, folks. Short break, just take a little drink, and we are back. Back to Arn and Tully. Really can't say anything bad about them as far as a team. Now, I don't think they teamed up much after they both left WWE in late '89, early '90. But my God, I mean, for the period of years they were together, there were few teams that were better. Few teams. They worked so well together, so smooth. Their time as members of the Four Horsemen, the original Four Horsemen, the good Four Horsemen. And all due respect to Benoit Malenko and various other members a part of it. And I'm not putting Roma on that list, by the way. Because I don't think Roma was that bad. I think Roma was a really good worker. Steve McMichael's the worst member of the Horsemen ever. But much more positive. Watching any Arn and Tully match, you could always enjoy it. Whether it's a TV match, whether it's a pay-per-view match, they always delivered. Always delivered, and they always did so well. So, that's why they're number 5. Number 4, the Hart Foundation. Big surprise, my favorite superstar of all time, Bret Hart. Anybody would be surprised that they're ranked this high. Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and of course, Jimmy Hart was their manager for a while. Great team. I worked with the Killer Bees, the British Bulldogs. They worked with a lot of other teams too, but those are 2 teams in particular that worked pretty well. They worked with the Rougeau brothers, I believe. The Rougeau brothers, again, I mean, I mentioned it in another show, or an honorable mention, because of how good they were. They worked with the Nasty Boys and actually tried to make the Nasty Boys look competent, which is hard to do because the Nasty Boys were dog shit in the ring and aren't necessarily the best people, from what I could tell. But anytime you watch a Hart Foundation match, really hard to find holes in it. Especially when it comes to Bret Hart. And it's no disrespect to Jim the Anvil Neidhart, who's a great powerhouse and, great energy and everything. Bret was much more the technician, and being in that tag team helped Bret, don't get me wrong. There's no way that Bret would have been where he was in the company had it not been for his time in the Hart Foundation. The thing is, though, the reason they're not ranked number 1, they had great times together. They were a great team. But they were only formed for, about 5 years? And yeah, the Hart Foundation, did band together as a stable later, which was great. And I do count that to a point. The Hart Foundation rank a little lower because, and I get why they pulled the plug and, separate them and everything. But they get knocked down just a little bit for how little they were, for the short time they were together. But still, they were in the golden era of tag teams, and being ranked number 4 on this, pretty damn good. So, anyway, now we go to number 3. Number 3, which is Beer Money. Beer Money, the best tag team in TNA history. Fight me. Seriously. Somebody try to name a better team. It's all subjective if you guys actually have better teams. Like, I almost ranked America's Most Wanted above Beer Money, but then I realized, as good as James Storm was there with Chris Harris, he was just a little bit better with Bobby Roode. I didn't think they were going to find the same damn success for James Storm in a tag team as they did with America's Most Wanted. Beer Money, first off, has one of the best themes ever in wrestling, period. I mean, I just love the theme. I just think the theme song's awesome. But Roode and James Storm, I wasn't even sure at first if it was going to work. I didn't know if it would. But it did. Great feud with LAX, with the Dudleys, Team 3D. They were part of a A couple of great multi-man matches at Bound for Glory 2008 and 2009 respectively. They did end up separating, of course, sometime in 2011, and they did reform when Storm went back to Impact Wrestling just for a brief period until Rude left, which was great. It was great that Rude left. Hopefully James Storm can leave at some point and maybe they can, even though Rude's doing great, with the way he is, they could always reform Beer Money at some point. James Storm could spend some time in NXT. They could call up and have a shocking reunion of Beer Money. I don't know if that many WWE fans will pop for it, but hopefully a good amount of wrestling fans that actually watch other promotions, that have watched other promotions, would pop for it. But Beer Money just had some great. They were so in sync as a team that it was hard to find any flaws in them. They knew what they were doing. They understood tag team wrestling. I mean, and Rude had been part of tag teams anyway. He'd been part of Team Canada, so he had done pretty well. But so many great matches that they had. Really can't find any flaws with them. Beer Money is just tremendous. Tremendous team. Number 2, the Steiner Brothers. The Steiner Brothers are fucking insane. Rick turned out to actually be a slightly more balanced one, despite the fact that Scott clearly is crazy. Don't get me wrong, Scott's entertaining. He's just crazy. But their time in the early WCW, NWA stuff, they weren't. They teamed a little bit. They teamed some. Then they went to WWF for a couple years and had some pretty good matches. And some pretty good, feuds and everything. And then they went, of course, I think they had like a brief cup of coffee in ECW. And then they went back to WCW and they were a great team. The Steiner Brothers, the explosiveness of how they would throw you with suplexes and toss you around and beat you up and drop you on your head, but safely. That's the one thing Steiner would do. He would hit the Steiner screwdriver, but he would hit it safely. I'm sure maybe some people got their bell rung a few times, but Scott Steiner was usually a pretty safe worker. So was Rick. Both had great individual success. Rick maybe more so, because even though Scott Steiner was a WCW champion at one point, and even though he kind of became maybe more of the bigger main eventer, Rick Steiner had that big TV title win over Mike Rotunda and actually had some pretty good championship success. So, yeah, Scott Steiner's probably more famous of the two, but I would say Rick, pretty underrated as a worker. But honestly, their match, like with the Road Warriors at Starrcade 89, even though they didn't face off with them much, other matches that they had, the Steiners always could work well with anybody you put in front of them. And could do some great things with a lot of guys that you wouldn't think. It's like, okay, these are powerful guys against powerful guys. And the Steiners just suplex them anyway because the Steiners do not play by human rules. Especially Scott Steiner. He will hurt you. If he wants to. Scott Steiner's a safe worker. So is Rick. But the Steiner Brothers are not ranked number 1. Who's number 1? The Road Warriors. Yes, the Road Warriors are my favorite tag team of all time. Are they the greatest technical tag team ever? No. Are they the greatest wrestling tag team ever? No. But my God, they were entertaining. And brawlers. And their gimmick was so over and their presence was so over and they went crazy. They were hugely popular. Even as heels, it didn't fucking work making them heels. It didn't work making them heels in the beginning. It did not work trying to turn them heel in late 1988. All due respect, R.I.P. Dusty Rhodes, not the best idea that he came up with. Mainly just trying to turn the Road Warriors heel. Feuding with them was one thing. But the Road Warriors is just, their stuff with the Midnight Express and that scaffold match that I mentioned earlier, the great matches that they could have, the great matches they had in WWE. They honest to God, they really should be more remembered for the WCW and AWA runs than they should for the WWE runs. You know why? Because their WWE run was, I think, at first 2 years, from 90 to 92. And then, I think they came back sometime in 97. And were there till, 98. 98, 99. Because then you had draws come in after Hawk had to be written off TV to get help. And then they had that brief little appearance in 2003, months before Hawk's death. But their time in the AWA, they were great. I mean, they had some great matches there. They had great matches in NWA, WCW. There's a lot of great matches, really, that it's impossible to mention. Like impossible to mention them all. But their work and any time they faced off against people or they hit these power moves, the crowd would just go nuts, especially in the Southern crowds, the WCW crowds. And even in AWA crowds was like, oh, it's a shot in the arm. It's like the Road Warriors are great. And they were great. And Paul Ellering, you know what? I can't, leave this show done without mentioning Paul Ellering, how important he was to the success of the Road Warriors. He was their manager. He helped them, did a whole lot of stuff, and cut the promos, did really, really well. And of course, Paul Ellering, Paul Ellering doing great, managing the Authors of Pain now. And hopefully they can succeed. They won't be the Road Warriors, but hopefully they can succeed. But the Road Warriors were a tremendous, tremendous team. Just one of the best ever. It's such a shame that Hawk passed away. But given his substance abuse problems and all that stuff, it's sadly not shocking. Still sad. But it's not really that shocking. But still, let's not talk about the Animal and Heidenreich version of the Road Warriors or the Legion of Doom because it was terrible. But really, they left a hell of a legacy. One hell of a legacy over a number of companies. And yeah, Hawk will be missed. But, we're going to end this on a positive note. These are 25 of the greatest tag teams ever that I've done in this show and the subsequent shows before it. Do you agree? Do you disagree with what I said? Like, share, comment, subscribe. My Twitter link is in the description. It's been Real Honesty with John Rittland. I'm John Rittland. I will see you soon.